Oh, another thing. I would be doing it on the other voice, so you not be shocked about it.
Okay.
I would explain it later.
No worries.
Good evening, my dear friends. My name is Simon, and today's project. I need to. Good evening, my dear friends. My name is Simon, and today I'm starting a very important project where I would be taking an interview in people who was struggling with different sorts of addictions. We're going to be speaking about alcohol addiction, about drugs addiction, about gambling addictions, and about even some other addictions which you maybe not think isn't that violent, like social networks or overeating. Stay tuned, this would be a very interesting project with the interview and a podcast with the people who went through the darkest side in a life, fight it and went it back to us to the light side. My first guest, it's an amazing person, his name is Dwayne, and the funny thing, Dwayne is my co-worker. We both working in very nice upscale place. I wouldn't go going too much into the details, but what I wanted to say is that Dwayne have a absolutely unique history. He was methamphetamine addict for 14 years, my dear friends, and he came all over that. He now is absolutely clean, and I even tell you more. He's working a great job right now, and he started to be a dentist assistant. My guy is 54 years old, and he started in this age. This is amazing. This is amazing story about recovery. This is amazing story about when you was in recovery. You had a lot of very interesting stories to tell, and I wouldn't be taking your time, my friends. Please, Dwayne, introduce yourself.
So, hey, I am Dwayne, and I am a recovering crystal meth addict. And like Simon said, I am 54 years old. I did crystal meth for 14 years. I drank for 22 years. And then I got arrested, and it kind of, that's what kind of got me to go towards recovery, because I almost went to prison.
Oh my God.
For possession. So.
Yeah. So it would be a very interesting story to go over, but first of all, let myself and our viewers know a little bit more about you, Dwayne. So can you please tell about your childhood? It was good or it was not really good?
So I grew up on a tobacco farm in South Carolina. We were cash poor, but we always had lots of food because we had our own garden. We raised cows and hogs, and so we had plenty to eat. Sometimes we were on like food stamps, government assistance. But most of the time, like we, were self-sustaining. Yeah, so I had a really good childhood. My parents were together all of my life. When I was an adult, they got a divorce, so I had a two-parent home. My parents kind of were fussy sometimes, so there was, maybe not 100% safety and security all the time, because of all the quarreling and stuff like that. But yeah, I like to say it like this. I was nourished, right? Like we were taken care of. We had food, shelter, all that kind of stuff. One of the areas I think that kind of had led, was a precursor to my disease was, I don't think we were really nurtured. And by that, I mean, they weren't the parents that would say, try this, try this, try this, try this, so that we kind of figure out what feeds our spirit, what feeds our soul.
They was more conservative, yes.
Yeah, more conservative. And so, yeah, we went to church a lot. I grew up. My parents kind of fell out of church a little bit, but I still kept going. I actually went to a Bible college. My first time in college, I went 3.5 years to a Baptist Bible college because I was giving God first priority in my life. And then when I was there, I realized I was gay. And that was just like, what am I doing here? And so I came back home, and when I came back home, I told my grandmother I was gay. She made me tell my parents. My father had a huge reaction, chased me around the house, tried to beat me up, and ended up in a counselor's office getting help for the gayness. And then after I went to the counselor's office, I just left home that day. I didn't go back to my house. I was 22 years old, so I was an
adult pretty much.
I was an adult. But I left home that day and went to a club that night and got drunk. So it was the first time where I had a problem in my life, and the way I solved it was to get drunk or to get high. And so that's where my addiction started. I had experimented with alcohol a couple of times with a couple of friends of mine, but I didn't really like it. I didn't like the taste of it. I tried wine, I didn't like that too much. I tried liquor, I didn't like that. I tried beer, but then I kind of got sweet drinks like strawberry daiquiris and stuff like that. And then that was okay. But when I told my parents I was gay, I went out that night and I got really, really drunk. So that was my first time getting smashed.
And you tell that you left your house, so where do you end up sleeping the next days?
So I left home with the clothes on my back, and I had a little gym bag, and it had my toiletries, toothbrush, and stuff like that. I had my address book that had my friends' names and numbers in it, and I had gotten my tax return check from the government, and I remember it was $489. So my intent was, I left home, I called someone I had met like once or twice, a drag queen named Randy. His drag name was April Showers. So I went, I called him and said, hey, I told my parents I was gay, they flipped out, my dad did. Can you pick me up? And my plan was to stay the night with them, and then I was gonna call a gentleman that I had met when I was in Bible college, who lived in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was gonna call him and say, hey, Parker, can I spend the night with you? Or can I stay with you? Not spend the night. I was gonna stay with him. But as things worked out, Randy and his boyfriend, his partner, Bart, they said, why don't you just stay with us? So I kind of just was saved by this gay couple. And that's when I started my drinking. So after that, do you want to hear a bit more? Yeah. So then after that, what happened was, I kind of moved on in life. Later on, my dad, within the year or two, my dad showed up at my job, and he's like, I come to take you home. It was my dad, my brother, my cousin, my brother-in-law. He said, you can come home willingly, or we're gonna tie you up and take you home. So I had to call the police, have them kicked off the property. And then, so it was a big struggle. Then I met my first boyfriend, and what I understand now is when I came out to my folks and the way things went down, I felt very abandoned. It was my first big time dealing with abandonment. So then when I got my first boyfriend, we've been together maybe like a year or so, and then we started breaking up. And because I never went to therapy, I never did anything to heal my abandonment from my family, when I started feeling abandonment a second time, it was much greater. And it's kind of like when you get mad. Like, I get mad at you for something right now, but then I can remember all the other things you did that made me mad. Same thing. I feel pain and abandonment from my boyfriend, but then I feel it from my family too. And so that's the first time that I tried meth, was during my first breakup, to soothe the pain, to escape the pain.
Can I ask you why meth? Why not cocaine? Why not some other things?
Good question. So, I was in Atlanta, Georgia. I lived in South Carolina, but I went to Atlanta, Georgia for Gay Pride. And I ran into my ex at my friend's house, and I got angry, and I went back to the hotel where all my friends from work were staying. And they were just doing lines off of a desk. And I guess people probably had always been doing drugs around me. But
Wait, lines? Aren't you smoke meth?
you can smoke meth, you can use needles, but they were snorting it. And so I guess people around me were always doing drugs. I just never noticed, I was kind of like dumb to it all. Mind you, I'm 27 years old at this point. And they said, "Do you want some?" And I said, "Sure." I didn't even ask what it was. And I just did it, and it made me tear up. It made me it burned so bad. And I don't really even remember the sensation from it, you know what I mean? But it's obviously it had me really high really fast. Because I don't know if you know much about meth, but you can just do a teeny tiny bit of meth and it will keep you up for 3 days. And
3 days?
And
oh my God.
And I did a whole line. And then I proceeded to just drink a lot. I was drinking straight vodka. I poured it into a can of empty Sprite can, and we left the hotel. I remember I was drinking vodka, just gulping it down. And I kind of blacked out that night. I don't remember a lot from that night, but when I came to the next day, because we went to a club that stayed open 24 hours, and I was on the dance floor with 2 guys, and they kind of were just taking care of me. And so that was my first time using meth. Then I moved back. I was there on vacation, right? So then I went back to South Carolina, and I decided I wanted to move back to Atlanta. So it took me a little bit of time to pack my stuff and in my job, and then move back. And then once I moved there, we started doing meth every weekend. And not only meth, we started adding stuff to it, like G, ecstasy.
What is G?
GHB. Most people know it as the date rape drug. A lot of people who use it in a bad way, they will put it in someone's drink, and you get real swirly on it, and you can black out, and you just kind of don't know what happens. Well, we call it you G out. If you do too much too fast, you G out, and you'll fall into a deep sleep, and then you'll wake up and you don't remember anything. So it's how a lot of people, it's how some people get raped, is because of GHB.
Sleeping tranquilizer.
Yeah.
So terrible thing.
And then we did, ketamine also, which is a tranquilizer for animals. I would do anything, but my 2 favorites at that time were ecstasy and meth.
So let me just drop it out. So you tried first time, you not quite remember what was happened, and when do you try it second time? Well, what was the time period between you do it first time and second time?
So I did it that weekend. That was in August, September, October, November. So about 3 months later, I moved back to Atlanta. So it was just like a 3-month interval. Interesting. Once I did the meth, when I went back to South Carolina, I started fooling around with cocaine a little bit. Because, I told my friends that, oh my God, I did drugs. And then they started telling me, oh yeah, well, I do drugs all the time. So then I did a little bit of cocaine and stuff while I was there, cocaine and drinking. But then when I moved back to Atlanta, again, like I say, we just started doing drugs every weekend, because we would go out every weekend. We go out every Friday, Saturday night to this one bar that was open 24 hours a day. And as much as it was the drugs, for me as a gay guy who was raised in the South, going to a place where you could be completely gay and there was no issues around it, and you had lots of other people there. I remember like one of the first parties I went to. It's called a circuit party. It was like probably 5,000 men in the lobby of this hotel, and I was on the second floor looking down, and I was like, I just felt so connected because I'm like, all of these boys experienced all the same stuff that I experienced as a gay man, like being called names and whatever. So it was just, it was very, it was fun in the beginning. Which I don't know if you know this, drugs have 4 stages. In the beginning, it's all fun. Second stage is it's fun with a little bit of problems. Third stage is a lot of problems with just a little bit of fun. And the fourth stage is it's all problems. So, so the beginning, it was amazing. I had so many good times, you know, on it.
Do you have like hangovers? Do you have like any health bad effects when you just started?
No, in fact, so I didn't recognize this at the time, but when I went through rehab and got an education and started going to meetings, 12-step meetings with other addicts, what I figured out was that I had alcohol issues before. I didn't identify as an alcoholic, and I still don't ever really feel like I was ever dependent on alcohol. By that meaning, if I didn't drink, I would start having the shakes. But I did abuse alcohol. I think someone told me that their definition that they were given for abusing alcohol was if you had more than 5 drinks in one night. I would have 3 beers at home, getting dressed, and before I would leave the house, I would do a shot of Goldschlager, and then we did this other thing. We put amaretto into a glass of beer, and it was called a Dr. Pepper shot. So I'd have like 1 or 2 beers, maybe 3, 2 beers getting dressed, a shot of Goldschlager, and then a beer with a shot of amaretto in it. And then I would go to the club and I would buy, you know, at least 1 or 2 more drinks, if not more. So, so when I started doing meth, I didn't have the alcohol problems. Because with alcohol, you know, you always hangovers, it's terrible the next day. But it kind of solved my alcohol problem. And what I did to accommodate my drug use, I would have my schedule, my work schedule. I usually had Sundays and Mondays off. And if I couldn't get Sundays off because I was at the restaurant or whatever, I would have like Monday, Tuesdays off. So I would go out all weekend long, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday sometimes. So I would miss a lot of sleep, but I wouldn't be drinking, so the hangover wasn't there. And then I would just keep doing more drugs, you know, and then I would crash for like, you know, a day or 2 after the weekend and just sleep all day long. So in the beginning, it was pretty controlled. I only did it, you know, on the weekends. And then fast forward, probably like 3 years in, me and my first boyfriend completely broke up, and I got a new boyfriend, and that's where we started. It was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then we would start getting our drugs on Thursday.
They add a day.
Yeah, we would add a day, and the reason we got it on Thursday was so that we could clean the house. So we'd clean up the house on Thursday, and we would do a lot more cleaning if we did a little bit of crystal meth, and then be up Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. The other thing that happens is you start adding sex to the mix. I guess the clinical term for it is chemsex, or the drug sex fusion. So when you start adding the sex to it, you know, that kind of makes it get more stretched out too. Because clubs are like Friday night, Saturday night, the crowd's going. But when you start having sex and sex parties and stuff like that, then it starts getting drug out more and more and more. And then I'll go and get to, so then me and my second boyfriend, we were together about 5 years, 4 or 5 years. And then I don't really know what happened first. we started breaking up. The relationship started falling apart. We started having problems. And so, again, I don't know if the breaking up started happening first or if I started using drugs every day happened first. But the combination of the two, we ended up breaking up. So now I have abandonment from this relationship. I feel abandonment from my first relationship, and then I feel abandonment from my family. So like the pain was just so much greater at that point in my life. And that's when I started using every day. And once I started using every day, that's when I had bigger consequences. I lost my housing. Like I was with my boyfriend. We went our separate ways. I got my own apartment. I lost my job. I couldn't pay my rent. So when I got 2 months behind, I got kicked out of my apartment. And then, you know, I met someone I already knew. He was a friend, but he was moving back to Washington, D.C. So I ended up packing up my clothes, my apartment, and moving with him. It was fine until it wasn't. But then when we got there, like, you know, we had big problems. And so I called my mother and I said, this man is crazy. I need someone to come get me. So my brother and my sister-in-law came and picked me up from DC, and then they took me back. They took me back to South Carolina. And then I had a big fight with my family. And so I got really angry, and again, I left, wow, I never thought about this. I left my mom's house with the clothes on my back, and I think I had maybe like one extra changing of clothes, and I bought a bus ticket, and I had $20 in my pocket, and I moved back to Atlanta, Georgia. And that was my second time being homeless. First time I was homeless is like the day I left my family's house. So this is my second time being homeless. And it got rough. I ended up sleeping on the street for a few nights. Realized I didn't have it in me to sleep on the streets. So then I went to a homeless shelter. And then, And then somewhere in all of this, me and my dad got in another disagreement. And I just really realized, like, we're never gonna have a relationship, you know? Because this was my struggle. I always wanted my family back in my life. And so I'm like, okay, we're never gonna have a relationship. And I think my hopelessness was like probably at its greatest. And that's when I started using needles and shooting up every day. So it's about the time that I started selling drugs.
So can I ask you, like, why do you switch to doing needles? What it's like cheapest way, or it makes you more high? What is
So I ended up moving to Charlotte, North Carolina, and was staying with my cousin. And I had there was this couple that I used to go have sex with a lot. And the guy called me one day. He's like, "Hey, do you wanna get wild?" And I'm like, "Sure." He's like, "Okay, I'm coming over." He's like, "I got some meth. I'll come over." So he came over, and he's like, "That's when he actually." That's when he said, "Do you want to get real wild?" And I said, "Sure." And he pulled out a syringe, and just like when I did the lines, they said, "Do you want to do it?" I thought about it, and 1, 2, 3, I'm like, yes. Him, same thing. He pulled out the syringe, I saw the needle. I remember my heart, I got a little bit like nervous. And I said, "Am I gonna do this?" And I said, 1, 2, I'm like, I didn't even, I was like, that's how much time passed. 1, 2, I said, yeah. And so that's how I started doing it. And then once I did it that way, it was intense. I don't really, it was just a different high. But there's also like, there's this little part of me that I was always the good kid growing up. I was the church boy. I was a Bible college kid. There was part of me that loved being doing bad things, like being naughty. And so, yeah, so like from that, like I went from smoking it because I had mostly been smoking it up to that point. Because me and my second boyfriend, I went from snorting it with my first boyfriend, second boyfriend went to smoking it, and then when I found the needles, for me personally, I just like the needles because it was faster and quicker and easier. And with the pipe, when you smoke it, I always felt like I had to be behind closed doors, because, so that nobody could see me, and it was very time consuming. But with shoot up, go, boom, out the door. I could go in the bathroom at a gas station, or go into the bathroom at a Nordstrom's in the mall. And so that's how I ended up starting to use needles. And so that's how I ended up doing needles. And then the only way you can support doing that much drugs all the time is you have to deal drugs, or be independently wealthy, or have someone give them to you. I did try prostitution along the way. I was a prostitute for like a month, but it just wasn't my thing. I didn't like it. It felt, I don't know. I don't really know how I felt. I was a little bit afraid of where it would take me. So I went back to dealing, because I had stopped dealing drugs, and I did the prostitution thing. I'm like, no, that's not me. So then I went back to dealing drugs again. And then I ended up moving back to Washington, D.C. Actually, I went to make a delivery of drugs to someone I knew there. And he's like, why don't you stay here and just sell drugs here? And so that's how I ended up in D.C. And within 1 year, I got arrested. And I had a lot of drugs on me, like a lot of cash, cocaine. I had everything.
So tell us how it's happened. I believe our viewers would be interested to listen.
Yeah,
How exactly
it's
that was.
crazy. So I was staying at a hotel. And I went to the post office and packaged up some drugs to send to a friend of mine, an acquaintance, another drug dealer. Let's say that, another drug dealer who lived in New York. And I would just package it and then ship it to him. And on the way back to the hotel, I came by the front desk and I'm like, oh, let me get the room for another night. So I stopped at the phone in the hallway and said, hey, can I get my room one more night? And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, the hotel's full. And I immediately became very suspicious, paranoid. Let me give a little footnote. I was already I never really, a lot of people that do drugs can go into big things of paranoia, and
Of course, you're afraid you're going to be caught, you're afraid you maybe got accidentally without consciousness, lots of things.
Yeah, right. And then they stay up. So the biggest thing is they stay up so many hours, and the sleep deprivation makes their mind just go crazy, right? So another guy that I was selling drugs to that sold drugs had gotten arrested, but he didn't tell me. So I was on high alert because of him getting arrested like a few days before. So when I came back and they said that we don't have a room for the night, I was like, that's never happened. And because I sold drugs for about 5-6 years, no one had ever said we can't give you the room another night. So I was like, oh my God, that was cops at the front door. So then I got really freaked out. I went to the pool bathroom by the pool deck, and I was gonna flush the drugs because I said I can justify having cash in my room because I'm looking for an apartment, which I was, but I can't justify having lots of drugs. So I went to pour it in the toilet, and I was like, oh my God, that's a lot of money. So I poured it into a cup with water, and then I was gonna pour the other package out, like a lot of meth, and I was like, and I just like in this moment, I took toilet paper, put it in my hand, poured like a lot of drugs in there, and made like a big ball of crystal meth, and then I chased it with the other one.
Ouch.
Like if I stop and think about that moment, it makes me want to throw up because it was the taste of meth is terrible, and like to put all that in your mouth at once. So like within an hour, I went back to the room and I called my friend, and within an hour my friend was over because I said I just swallowed a lot of meth. I need to get out of this room, and he came over, but I wouldn't open the door. He's like, Dwayne, open the door. Like an hour. He was out there like an hour, banging on the door. The maids got involved, the engineers from the hotel. Nobody could get me to open the door, so they called the police, and the police came, banged the door in, and then finally got into the room and they arrested me. And by the time they got me arrested, by the time they put me in handcuffs, they stood me up and I said, I need to go to the hospital because I swallowed a lot of meth and my whole body was just like shaking all over. So they put me on the stretcher to the hospital. I was handcuffed to the bed for 18 hours. My heart rate was like 181, 191 beats a minute for like 18 hours, and then it dropped. And when it dropped, then they took me to jail. And then I got out of jail. You know, I'd never been in trouble in DC, so I only stayed in jail for a few hours. And then the next day I went to see the judge. They let me out. They said, you need to go see this guy at this address. I went and saw this guy at this address. He said, you need to start taking these classes. And actually the classes were actually an outpatient program, a rehabilitation for drugs and alcohol.
So they didn't do any charges that you like, you were selling anything?
Oh yeah, I had 5 charges. I had possession with intent to distribute. I had possession of cocaine. I had possession of drug paraphernalia. I had criminal trespassing. And there's one more. But yeah, maybe it's 4. But yeah, I had 4 charges. But this is also the time when I started going to 12-step meetings. And I met this guy at a meeting who became my first sponsor. He's like, I used to be where you were. He's like, I got this friend who also went through the court system. If you do what they say, they may not send you to prison. So I got very, very serious right away about my recovery and about like not using anymore. Not right away. I had some hiccups. In the beginning, I thought I was getting away with, using and them not knowing. But then, about a month or 2 in, my guy, the pretrial service officer, he showed me the computer. He's like, look, you were positive for drugs, positive. You were negative a week, negative a test. He's like, and now you're positive again. What happened was I ran out of drugs, and then I couldn't take it anymore. And I took my last $1,000 and I ordered more drugs to be shipped to me, and I got high again. But when he showed me that, I realized like I couldn't beat the system. So I just started doing everything they asked me to do. And at the end of probably like close to 2 years, I was in the system, and I did everything they asked me to. So then I got my sentencing, and for having 52 grams of meth, all I got was 1 year probation. And it's only because I did everything they asked me to do. I did urine tests twice a week for like almost 2 years. So I had proved myself to them that I had changed my ways. So yeah.
Did you struggle when you passing this time, like physically? Like, did your body ask you to to get drunk or get high meth?
No. So not this time. I'll go fast forward. When I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina with my cousin, I did stop using for a while because my drug dealer got busted and I didn't have anywhere to get drugs. That's the only time that I had a physical reaction to meth. But I remember laying on the couch and I was cold and getting chills and stuff because I was in withdrawals because I was doing so much at that time. This time, I didn't have that same effect because I kind of weaned myself off of it, right? So I got in trouble. I quit using I would use 2 days and then not use for a day. Or excuse me, I would use and then for 2 days I wouldn't use, and then I would do my drug test, and then for 2 days I would use, and then for another 2 days I wouldn't use. So I kind of I didn't stop it all at once really fast. And that happened for a month or so. But another thing, I think the reason for me stopping was almost like just turning a switch. My dad used to drink a lot, and he got involved in church, and he would say, the Lord just took the taste of liquor out of my mouth. So what that translates into is I was indoctrinated with people can just stop drinking. People can just stop doing drugs. And I know that over the years of recovery, some people can just stop like that, and others will go 10 years because they just can't seem to stop it forever. So for me, I just, I'm very grateful that I was raised in that kind of environment where,
But it's possible to stop when you say you need to do this.
Yeah, exactly. And the other reason why I was able to stop is because I had a lot of supportive services. I was going to rehab. I was doing urine tests. I was also going to therapy twice a week in the beginning. And then after that, it was even more, twice a week in the beginning, and eventually it started weaning down. But yeah, I was doing a lot of stuff. I went to 4 meetings a week in the beginning, at least 4 meetings a week, because my first sober living house required me to do 4 meetings a week. And then after that, I would even do more, just because when I first got sober, all my friends were drug addicts, and so suddenly I didn't have anybody to hang out with except for people in recovery. And what we all did is we just went to meetings all the time.
So what about people who was on the meetings? Can you say in a percentage how many of that got recovered, how many of that fighting all the time, and how many of that just give it up?
Well, there's a strong correlation between people that go to meetings regularly and people who don't. Most people who go to meetings regularly are able to stop using drugs pretty successfully almost all the time. Some people will struggle, occasionally, people will struggle for maybe 10 years trying to get clean and sober. But even those people, they can eventually beat it if they do meetings and stuff. So I know relapse for people who are trying to come out of addiction, it's very difficult, and the relapse rate is very, very high. But if you were to, in my opinion, I don't know if there's statistics to prove this, but my experience with this is people who go to meetings tend to be able to figure out how to stay sober. And it's not just going to meetings. It's going to meetings, participating in the meetings, talking about your stuff. There's there's healing, there's power in when you talk about your stuff and you tell what happens. Because you get rid of the shame, you get rid of the hurt, you get rid of the pain.
You can open yourself.
Yeah, you open yourself up. And you create friends and bonds and community. One of my favorite things, the opposite of addiction is connection. And that's what happens when you go to meetings. You end up making connections with many, many people. And that's, no one gets sober by themselves. The reason you are an addict, I believe, is because you've always relied on yourself. You always tried to answer all your problems all by yourself. And people who struggle, it's because they don't ask for help, because, and I learned this in college. One of my classes, it was a team working class. We all took a quiz, and of course, I was one of the highest scores in the class, but I didn't make 100%. I think I made an 80. But when we took the quiz together as a group, we made higher than my highest score. So what that taught me in life, which I kind of I didn't see this clearly when recovery. The answer to the problem is better if you and I work on this problem together, because it's just more brain power. It's more, so you have to. People who want to do everything by themselves, they struggle a long time in recovery, or coming off of drugs. You have to get help. I always say it like this: my best thinking had me. I didn't talk about the other arrests, but I had been arrested 4 times, but there were 4 arrests, and I still saw myself as someone who was doing pretty good in life, like the delusion there, and sometimes the importance of having other people in your life is maybe not even to figure out the answer right away, but for them to say, that's not right. That your thinking is wrong there. Because sometimes you can be completely down. No, I didn't do that. And they're like, yes, you did.
Can you please tell more about your sponsors, about how do they affect your way to recovery? Do you still talk to these people? What is your experience?
Yeah. So I've had 3 sponsors, and I still talk to my first sponsor, and I talk to my last sponsor. The other ones have moved away, but maybe for me, maybe a little bit less about sponsorship, but just my community, my friends. When you get sober, everybody you get sober with, they're considered your litter mates, because you're the same litter, you all came through at the same time. And I'm still in contact with many people that came through at the same time as I did. Banana, go.
You can chew.
So yeah, but yeah, it's so important to have people around you, and it's not even like it's not having people around you that go, hey, what are you doing, like whatever. For me, it's like this. I was struggling in one of my classes, my organic chemistry class, and I remember calling one of my friends, and he said, oh, by the way, this class is very hard. And when I was in college at George Washington University, people could make, a 17% in the class and still get a passing grade because the curve was that big, right? Fast forward, my other friend, organic chemistry 1, I don't think I passed any of my tests, but I got a C in the class because the curve was that big. And then when I started organic 2, my buddy's like, hey, be nice. He's like, the last time I remember you were always making like 40s and 50s. In organic 2, you're making a lot of 60s, and I think I actually I think I passed maybe 1 or 2 tests. Like, so, not only are they there to make sure you don't step off into the, your old habits, but just to encourage you and make you see life in a different way, But it's super important. You cannot get sober by yourself. You just can't. You have to have people around you that help you and talk to you and help you sort that out. There's probably some people out there that have done it all by themselves, but most people, and let me add this too.
Most people need a support.
Need
a visible support.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing too, like my goal was not to just stop using drugs and stop drinking. My goal was to be happy, joyous, and free. My other goal was I wanted to be successful, 2 things that happened in my life that really helped me a lot with kicking the habit. The first one was they made me do a timeline. When's the first time you drank? And that's why I know my story so well. When's the first time you got drunk? When's the first time you used drugs? So that's how I figured out. Told my parents I was gay, got drunk for the first time from the abandonment. First boyfriend breaks up, I tried meth. Second boyfriend, I started doing meth every day. Me and my dad, another fight, I started injecting meth. So seeing that and how it happened, it made me understand what would cause me to go deeper into my addiction. The other one was, how much money did you spend drinking and drugging? Like I said, I did meth for 14 years every week. For 7 years, the last 7 years, I was doing it every day. Easily, like I spent $500,000. And
Wow.
when I did this project, I was fresh out of a homeless shelter. And I was like, geez, that's enough money to buy a house, a condo, and a BMW, and you have nothing. You're living in a homeless shelter. So for me, like just from a dollar and cents view, I never want to do drugs again. It just doesn't. It's dumb. It's a waste of money, right? Especially when you understand why you were doing it. You were just trying to solve these other problems with that. With the drugs. Or
Exactly, it's what all addictions is about. You're just looking for the easiest possible solution.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's right, but if it's the easiest solution for today and if it's working today, your brain just want to move on it.
Yeah.
Just want to close that question, like right now and now, in this very moment. Unfortunately, our brain for some reason cannot think for a couple steps ahead. Our brain don't like going to the gym. Our brain don't like to study and work for some different project to get some different sort of education, because you need to spend for education couple of years, and couple of years you would be just studying, not receiving any money. Even if after you finish your study you will find a good job and you will make way more money than you was before, it doesn't work to your brain, because your brain cannot get dopamine only about thought what would be happen with you in 2 years. But your brain can get a dopamine from a thought what would happen with you tonight. And this is very distraction.
Yeah. I don't know if you know about this. So the amount of dopamine or endorphins that are released, like with sex and cocaine and eating, is in like the 200 to 300 range. The amount of units of endorphins or dopamine that's released in using meth is closer to 1,200. So it's super, super powerful. This is another thing I'll talk about too. I think another reason why I was very successful in stopping drug use is when I went to rehab, I also got diagnosed with ADHD. I know a lot of other people who've got other diagnoses, whether it be bipolar or depression, whatever it is, but there is the self-medicating that they're doing can be treated and medicated through doctors and with other medications, or just with other, therapies, whether it be cognitive behavior therapy and stuff like that. But it's super important, to if you have diagnosis, to get your diagnosis, and then to follow through with the with treatment for that. And for me, it was medication. I started out taking Strattera, which is a non-stimulant. Once I got out of the court system and stuff, I asked if I could try Adderall, which, by the way, is called, Adderall is amphetamines. That's the name for it. I was doing methamphetamines on the street, so they're almost exactly the same chemically. But the difference is it's controlled through my doctor. I don't know if you know this, but I have to see my doctor every 2 months to get my prescription, and my monitored, to make sure I'm not abusing it and stuff. But yeah, so yeah, I was going to go back to what I said earlier. So my goal was not to just stop using drugs and drinking. I wanted to be happy, joyous, and free. And then the second part that I added to that, which has been really good for me, because I think one of the main reasons why people can and will relapse lots of times is boredom, right? They get bored. They have nothing else to do. But I went back to school to get an education and to get a professional career. So I just have kept moving up the bar, like, from drug addict to this to this. Like my life is going this way, and so, people just want to stop using drugs. Like if that's all they want to do, lots of times they struggle too, I think, But for me, I've just kept myself busy with goals,
So tell me more about goals you set, achieve.
So I got diagnosed with ADD. I got put on ADD medicine within 1 month. I told my therapist, I said, I'm going to go back to school because I could tell the difference in my life. The ability to, when I went to rehab, in the beginning, I would sit on my hands all the time like this, and I would shake, I would bounce. And when I read up on ADD, the thing that the medication does is it helps you with your impulse control. And I did this to help me not be so impulsive. So within a month, I told my therapist, I said, I'm going back to school. It took me about 2 years to kind of get through everything, maybe even 11, 12, 13. Actually took like 3 years, but I finally got back into school. And then it took me like about 5 or 6 years to get my biology degree. I started out like a community college. I had to go all the way back in remedial math. Like, to be honest, I forgot how to do fractions. I can still add and subtract and do multiplication and division, but fractions is where I had to start. And I had to work my way back up. Some math classes I had to take twice. I think trigonometry, I actually think I took that class 3 times. But I just kept doing the work, and I got my biology degree. And along the way, I finally was able to say out loud that I wanted to go into medicine. And it took me a while to get there, enough courage to say it, because I had a lot of self-doubt and fear. And then finally I just proclaimed it. I'm like, I want to be a dentist. And over the years, so that's where I'm at now. So I got my biology degree. I moved to LA with my partner, and I just applied for dental school. I sent my application to 11 schools, and I'm waiting now. If I get into dental school, I want to become a dentist, and that's like 4 years more of schooling. And then on the other side of that, then I will take my victory lap from farm to Bible college to drug addict to drug dealer to doctor to having a doctorate in dental medicine.
What a long, unusual way, my friends.
Yes.
What a long, unusual way. So can I ask you actually back to your childhood, because you say it's like the first, I would say, the first heart events start to happen at the age of 22. What was your life before 22 years old? So you just studied at school, studied at college, and just being a good kid? Or you had some incidents before that?
I was a good kid. My older brother had curfews. I had no curfew because my dad, he said, I don't worry about Dwayne because he's either at church or he's at his aunt and uncle's house. Like he never, I was just never got into trouble, So I was a really good kid. I worked when I was in high school. I considered myself having 3 jobs because in South Carolina, when I was in school, when you got your night driver's license, which meant 16, which is what, like 14, like in 10th or 11th grade, I could drive a school bus. So I would get up, drive a school bus route, go to school, drive the bus home, and then I had a car and I would go to work at a retail store, and then I would go back and go to school. So school bus, and a job. So I've always been a worker bee. You know me at work. Like
Yeah.
I work hard all the time. So
He is not he didn't lie.
I'm a busybody. But yeah, but the thing is, like, this is the interesting part. Like, I was the good kid, but I was lying, and
Why you was lying? You afraid bad reaction from the parents?
It's weird. I didn't see myself as gay until I was in college. This is an interesting story. So me and my friends started donating plasma. And if you donated plasma, this was in like 1989, 1990, 91, you would get $15. And we were broke college kids. So we would all pile in someone's car, go donate plasma, and get $15. Well, you had to do a little questionnaire at the beginning, and one of the questions on that was, are you a man who has sex with other men? And I would look around, like, I don't think I ever lied on it because I've always had this thing where I always tell the truth. But I remember like being so scared that someone might see what I was doing, but I would have to check yes. And even if I didn't check yes, it started resonating in my head, like, oh, and then fast forward, we're in chapel one day at Bible college. Dr. Thigpen preached a sermon. I guess he brought up homosexuality, and honestly, like, it was like a ton of bricks fell on me. I'm like, oh my God, either you're gay or sinning. And I struggled with it. I actually gained a lot of weight during that time. And then when I came to terms with my sexuality is when I quit Bible college. Because I had 3.5 years in Bible college, and I quit without a degree or anything. Because I'm like, why am I here? Like if they knew who I was, I would not be welcome. And so, my parents had a huge reaction to it, and it's partly my fault because I lied. Not only did I go to Bible college, I took girls to proms. Even though I never had like a steady girlfriend when I was in middle school. In high school, I think I dated a girl. Here, like one girl I had like a serious relationship with. I kind of bamboozled them.
So you play like a perfect citizen, perfect son, and but under yourself you wasn't really okay with that because there is some of the dark side hiding somewhere around.
Yeah, maybe. I've never. I struggled with it for like a year, but like not in a major way. It was just more like probably just struggling with not being able to be honest about stuff, and probably just like too like it was getting more complicated, right? Like how do you go to Bible college classes and then sneak off to parks to have sex in cars with men, and then hurry back to school before dinner is they stop serving dinner, and then sneaking around like it became very chaotic, like the whole lifestyle, and I'm very grateful because this is how it ended. I was house dog sitting for a couple. All my friends had went home for Thanksgiving break, and it came to me like this: "Fuck it, you're gay." And from that moment on, I never looked back. I'm like, no big deal, I'm gay. This is interesting. So growing up, my grandmother had went back to school, and I found I was like in middle school. I found a psychology book of hers, and there was a sketch in there, and it had little boys beside a bed, like touching each other and playing, and the caption was something, it was given a description like what the picture, what the drawing was about, and it was just talking about this is very normal childhood behavior. So I started having sex and stuff when I was like 10 years old with my, with people I knew. I'll leave it at that.
At 10 years old?
At 10 years old.
In
And so
which way?
Like oral sex, by middle school, so what, maybe 13, 14, I started having anal sex. And so when I read that in that book, to me, I was just like, oh, this is normal. This is what all little boys do. When I got older, I realized like, okay, and even some of the people that I had sex with growing up are now married and have kids and families, and they are not gay. Some of them are gay, but some of them are not, so yeah, colorful.
So the next question is actually like when you move out from your parents and you start to hang out with gay people in clubs, bars. I mean, like aren't you and all of these people wasn't happy enough that you are in your own community and nobody nobody can really touch you there? Aren't it was like happiness enough on it, so you guys just doing all of the sort of drugs and drinking?
Yeah, so this is interesting. So when I came up to my parents, it was 1993. So let me give you a little bit of history. in the gay community, up until 1995, if you became HIV positive, what that ultimately meant was that your HIV would turn into AIDS when your T cell count went below 200, and you would die, right?
Yeah.
So I came out and in 1995, the new drugs came around, and when these new drugs came around, people started living longer. Like they stopped dying. Excuse me. They didn't really know how long they were going to live, but they stopped dying. I remember reading an article. It was a guy who lived in San Francisco, and his whole article was about, today is the first day that I picked up my newspaper and there were no obituaries for any gay man who had died from AIDS. So I came out in 1993, so it's a very scary time to be gay.
Sure.
But for me, it was very exhilarating, right? Super exhilarating, because I had been living with all this stuff, So fast forward, by the time I didn't start doing drugs until like 1997. So from 95 to 96, 97, so like 2-3 years had passed. In the gay community, something started happening called circuit parties. And what it was is they started throwing big parties all around. I think the original one started in Atlanta, Georgia, but they started having them everywhere. And what it was huge groups of gay men, especially, just celebrating, right? Like suddenly we're not gonna die. And probably, in my opinion, a lot of them were getting zonked out of their minds. Why? Because they had I had my abandonment issues, but imagine like one night I remember doing drugs with a guy, and we started talking about the AIDS epidemic. He said, every one of my friends died. He's like, I'm the only person out of my friend group who did not die. And here we are doing drugs. So for me, I'm doing drugs maybe for my own set of reasons, but then you got this guy who is dealing with, can you imagine, like all your friends dying? Like it was so much. So I feel like, two things were happening for me. I was coming into a gay world by the time I started doing drugs that was all about this huge celebration of life. We're not gonna die. We're blah, blah, blah. And then I'm mixing with people who were trying to heal like these terrible wounds, and hurts and pain, for me, like I think about like the rejection that I felt from my family, and then I found my family in my gay family, right? My chosen family. And then imagine if all those had died, like, oh my God, like I can't imagine. It's a miracle some of the gay men that are a little bit older than me are still living, right? You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I was one of those people, in the beginning, I used to say, like, sometimes I think maybe the drugs kept me from committing suicide. Sometimes when the abandonment and the hurt and the pain was intense, I think the drugs could have potentially saved my life. Eventually they became, a threat to my life. But in the early days, it gave me an out from all the hurt and pain that I was feeling. And didn't even have the words and the ability and the know-how and the understanding to kind of talk about it and express it, So yeah.
What not easy conversation we had in the moments, but I really appreciate your time, Dwayne, to being open about all of this experience, about not being afraid to talk about it, about not being afraid, to maybe relieve all of this, emotions again. So can I ask you, what is your current relationship with methamphetamine, alcohol, or maybe any others? Do you have any addictions now? You like to eat, of course.
I love biscuits. No, so this is for me, the way I live my life is I can never have alcohol, I can never have drugs, and any mind-altering substances. and I don't allow myself to take drugs that aren't prescribed to me either, right?
Yes.
You know, like if it's your drugs, it's your drugs. Your doctor gave it to you because he knows you and knows your health history. So I have, you know, 0, and I'm. Can I look? I'm a peep. So today I am.
You had a counting cough, yes?
I am 4,901 days clean, which translates into 13 years, 4 months, and 30 days. So almost 13 years and 5 months clean and sober. So this is something that I do. There are many reasons why people use drugs and alcohol: bored, stress, anger, hurt, pain.
All together.
Yeah. So on my list of things I can do when these things come up in my life, at the very bottom is crystal meth. Above that is to drink alcohol. Above that probably is like shopping, acting out sexually. When I was single, maybe acting out sexually, overeating. When overeating, sex, and the shopping get kind of wacky, I recognize that that's old behaviors, and I know next would be drink alcohol and do drugs. So all these are okay until I get to alcohol. Alcohol is my line in the sand. I can never have alcohol again. Do I think I could maybe manage alcohol? Sometimes my brain tells me probably, but my heart tells me no. So another scenario I use is when you drink, your inhibitions go down. So maybe I saw someone doing a little drugs. I might be more tempted because I'm drunk or drinking. So for those reasons, it just doesn't make any sense. Also, I hated hangovers. Like to me, a hangover is worse than one of the worst things you can experience in life. So yeah, and the best part about all this is I just have no desire to do any of that now, because I know, when you know better, you do better. When you know another way to handle stuff, you just do that.
Sure, you're absolutely right. In alcohol, it's just a hangover. You're just killing your nerve cells. You're killing your other organs inside. Yeah, it doesn't work temporarily fun, that's for sure.
So let me add this word too. So, the reason that people go to drugs and alcohol, it's a spiritual problem.
Absolutely.
Like, it's not like a church spiritual, religious spiritual. It's their spirit is desperate, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, they desperate because they cannot realize what they want in their life, or they cannot find what even they want to do in their life, they say.
Yeah, they might be desperate, they might be lost, they just might be not paid attention to, right?
Yeah, you just mentioned the boredom, stress, and loneliness. I think it's the 3 main reasons why people end up doing any sort of addictions. So can we go, in your opinion, about all of these 3 and how you deal with this, and what advice you have to people who suffer with the boredom?
So boredom, so this thing with boredom, are you bored, or what I would say, or is it you just really want to do something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can you be bored? We live in America. We have so many ways and so many avenues to watch entertainment on TV. So TV can pacify you, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have plenty of space. For me, I think boredom usually, for me, I think it's more of a code. Like, I want to really be doing this or that. You know what I mean? So boredom is easy fix. Like, call a friend, go do something, read a book, whatever.
So let's classify it. That boredom is not a condition when you actually have nothing to do. So this is a condition when you want to do really something important, but you feel yourself neither too weak or neither not prepared or neither just too lazy, to put all of the effort on it. And you classified yourself, okay, I cannot do what I really want, and nothing else is satisfying me. So okay, I'm bored. I have nothing to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just like at your job, right? You do the same thing all the time. Most people, jobs are, they have a description, and you get bored at your job, right?
Sure.
Your spirit gets kind of tired of it because it's like whatever, So yeah, so like again, it goes back to it's a spiritual condition. Loneliness. My favorite statement to that one is, if you have a phone, you're not alone. That's a Dwayneism. That's one that I made up until my sponsees and myself.
But can I ask you like about personal, like for example, like I'm calling quickly with my parents, with my different friends in all of the countries abroad, but because I'm immigrant who like often changing places and first I move, I have literally nobody to speak. I do feel myself like very lonely sometimes.
Yes.
So how do you advise like to deal with the loneliness on a place?
That's the beauty of a 12-step program. When I moved from DC to LA, I knew nobody here. My partner knew many people here. I knew no one. I had met a few people because we came down in like January to get an apartment, and I moved here in March. There's a couple people I had met, but I didn't know any of them. But what we did is we went to a meeting every day for the first 30 days. And what that did is when I went to meetings, I met new people, and those people go to meetings all the time. So immediately I had a community. When I get into dental school, if I have to move again, that will be one of the first things I'll do. I will connect to the 12-step programs, whether it's Overeaters Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Crystal Meth Anonymous. No matter where I go in this world, Alcoholics Anonymous, which is like the mothership, like these meetings and programs are everywhere in the world now, right? They're a worldwide organization. And when you walk in, people know you. They know your story. Everybody that's an addict has a unique story, but it's not. We all start with one drug, and then we go to another drug. Alcohol, then to another drug. Some people like me might skip some other drugs, and then you keep, and you start out having fun, then it goes to no fun. You start out, with money, you end up with no money. Like, yeah, they're all basically the same,
And you would say it's all because everybody has this void inside of themselves for a different reason, and they just try to feel with the best possible solution at this very time.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's not even, like for me, I had my moments where I would feel lonely and sad and whatever, but for me, what I did, the drugs were just fun. I never realized that I was getting high to avoid the loneliness. I never realized I was getting high to deal with the abandonment, So yes, so the loneliness to me is an easy fix. It's a simple fix. It may not be easy, I'll put it that. It's a simple answer, but it's hard. Sometimes these are two of my favorite statements from meetings and stuff. Sometimes the heaviest thing in the room is the phone, picking up the phone to call someone. Sometimes the hardest phrase, hardest word to say in any language is help. I need help.
Have you been sponsored to somebody?
Yes.
Tell me about that experience.
My sponsees?
Yes.
So I have several sponsees, and really all it is remember I said earlier, the opposite of addiction is connection. Having a sponsor is like one of your first places to go and practice making connections again with people. The way of the world with any addiction, whether it be gambling, where you end up in the machine or the gambling machine or the card game, right? It becomes very lonely because for me as a meth addict, it was me and the drug. If I had my drugs, then I had space for you or a job or something else. If I didn't have my drugs, that's all I could think about until I got them, right? So the opposite of all that is connection, and that's why it's so important to. That's why I'm a big advocate for 12-step programs because you get a community with it.
So you would say the most people who got to the 12 steps and who stay with them, they go over it.
Yeah, they come out on the other side. Now, do they make it? No. I've been sober 13 years, and I think on my list of people who died from addiction or addiction-related stuff is 13. So it's like about one a year, you know, and that's just with the people that I know, you know. So it's that even if you go to meetings, it's not a complete guarantee, you know, that you will beat this thing, you know. I'll put this into like, I've never been one to be shameful of my addiction, you know, because I say it like this: it's a disease, and if I had colon cancer or prostate cancer, and I beat it, I would be joyful. I would tell everybody. I would be proud of myself, right? So, if you are trying to get sober and clean and overcome any kind of problem, you know, and you have shame around it, it makes it. There's no need for the shame, right? Like it's a disease, and if you can beat it, then be very proud. You know, if you have a chance to beat it, and you're trying to beat it, you know, imagine if you're trying to fight cancer, and you were so embarrassed, like, oh my God, I can't believe me, I have cancer, like, you know, like you wouldn't be motivated to go do your treatments and stuff. But if you're like, oh yeah, I have cancer, and I'm gonna fight my way out of this, right? Like there's no gain in the shame. So
I absolutely agree. Like it's a very strong decision to look truth in the eyes and just go over it, because the first rule to defend a problem is to accept the problem. Is to say to yourself, yes, I did this wrong, and there's probably nothing good was on it, but I'm accepting this now. I am understanding that there is an actual problem and I need to go and fix it.
yeah.
Absolutely right. And
Let me add something here. So I think where people get caught up in shame, it's because of this, right? Because they think that they know how to do things otherwise, right? I'll give you an example. I know my formula for making an A on a test is I generally need to study 3 full days before I take my test. So if my test is on Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I need to study a lot for those tests, right? So fast forward, if I get a test and I only study 2 days, one time I remember I didn't study any of those 3 days. The day that I had to take the test, I got up like 2 hours before my test and studied for like an hour, and took an hour to get dressed and go to school, and took my test, and I caught myself beating myself up, you know? Like, you know better. You know how to do this, Dwayne. And what I say to myself now is I did not know how to do that. Because if I did, I would have worked it out, you know? I go, what were the other factors? Like, did I have other tests? Did I have other assignments that week or the week before? Maybe I was mentally tired because maybe that week I didn't have a lot of homework, but the week before I kind of got stressed out, right? Same thing with addiction. You know, why didn't you stop before you lost, you know, everything you have, all your money, all your friends? Because you didn't know how to, you know? You just didn't know how to, you know? And now, if you will come in and be teachable and create connections with people, you can figure it out. It is possible. I believe everybody can come out of their addiction if they're willing to do the work. My formula for, like, it's interesting. Somebody at work asked me recently, they're like, why are you so happy all the time? And, you know, I said, well, there's a couple of reasons I think. I said, you know, because, you know, the hurt that I felt when I came out in my family, we had all our family problems, right? It makes me want to be very kind and accepting to people, right? And then the other part of that is, once I got rid of the drugs and alcohol, my life is this. I get up every day and I do what I want to do. I become who I want to become. And if I'm not happy with a part of my life, then there's my next task. That's my to-do list today. Fix this. You don't like your job? Then hunt for another job. You don't like this person? Learn how to avoid that person, or learn how to make peace with that person, you know? So my life is about, you know, in my early days of recovery, I had to work on like stability stuff, like having food, having a job, you know, having income,
Sure.
you know, taking care of my health and stuff. But once I got stabilized, I realized, okay, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And for me, I chose something really big and really fantastic. I want to be a dentist. I want to be a doctor, you know? And so that gives you a whole new source of power and energy and drive. That's what I'm looking for, drive, yeah.
I'm very happy, to be honest, that you find your way, that you first of all find 12-step program and nice people who would support you all the way through, and you find your community where you actually had opportunity to become best version of yourself and understand that you can actually build the life you always wanted, and you can hang out with the people who would actually accept all your choices and would really try to help you to take you out from all of this. And now you're living the life you wanted to, and you don't have time to be boring, because you was like, oh, I have so much things to do. I need to do this and I need to do that, and I just don't have a time for, like, you know, being bored. I don't have opportunity to look for a fast dopamine, because, you know, you probably got for all of the 54 years old, like, you just got bored from a fast dopamine. I believe it's also, like, you know, the age thing.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so let me show you something. This is another big part of my recovery. So You Can Heal Your Life.
Mhm.
It's a book. I'm gonna give you a copy. I got a copy. But this book really, what it taught me how to love myself, right?
Mhm.
And so one thing I say all the time is, I love myself. Therefore, I have a job that I love. I have a job where they love me and appreciate me. I love myself, so I brush my teeth. I love myself, so I go to my doctor. I love myself, so I take my medicine every day. You know, ultimately, you know, the biggest thing, part of the healing process, is learning to love yourself. And you know, I say this all the time. Other addicts come in, you know, and this is something it's something I just figured out recently. I kept saying, I want you to love me. You know, what that really translated into is what I probably been more exact about what I was trying to say is, I want you to take care of me, and I want you to never leave me, right?
Yes.
And so, and I always was looking at it from the outside. And now that I love myself, you know, I say, if you are in a love deficit, I can love on you, my partner can love on you, friends from recovery can love on you, but it's like pouring love into a bucket that has holes in it, right? It will never fill up because there's holes there, right?
It came and goes,
yeah.
and never stays.
But when you find the love that's inside of yourself, right? Like,
This would stay forever.
yeah, it's a fountain, it's a well of that never runs dry. It's like the more you give it away, the more you have to give away, right?
Yes.
And the way that I feel like you tap into that is you learn to like yourself and love yourself, and then, you know, because I like myself, love myself, I also learn how to take care of myself, and then when I take care of myself, I have energy at work to love on other people, you know, that maybe are not as lovable, you know.
Yeah, of course. If you love yourself, first of all, it's easier to love the world and to love people around you.
Yeah,
Absolutely right.
exactly. So that's a big part of it too. Yeah. It's learning to love yourself.
Yeah, so I think it's a beautiful time to finish that interview because you just give me the main answer to the question, like how to avoid yourself or your kids, your friends getting involved in any sort of addiction, in any sort of the dealing with the problem with not a proper way of dealing with the problem.
Yeah.
Because yeah, the answer is like people went to all of this addiction because they didn't love themselves and they ready to and they ready to self destruction. And it's way easier to do a self destruction if you didn't love yourself, if you didn't care about yourself. But if you love yourself and care about yourself, like you would look on a self destruction like absolutely damn thing because you love yourself and you have something to care about, be it being is the people or the world or yourself or all together. Thank you very much, Dwayne, for all of your time. It was an amazing interview. I do learn some new thing about how oh. Uh, Thank you very much. Okay, let me just keep. Yeah, sorry, dear viewers. I'm here, lady, like 1 hour and a half, and the average time of a school lessons is what is this in America? It's 45 minutes.
45 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm doing already twice of it, so please, no judgment to me. I just wanted to say that it was very informative interview, very honest, and that was a long story of looking for a self-love, of looking for a self-appreciation, and also about to find the right people who would accept you. Because you take all of the way from North Carolina from to Los Angeles and you meet a lot of people on your way, a lot of people who give you love, a lot of people who give you hate, a lot of people who also offering different things, somebody offering you drugs, but somebody offering you recovery, and that was such a story. And I just in generally happy that you went all over it and now you can be a right example to somebody who in struggle, in somebody who want to fix themselves.
Yeah. I'll say this. This is the most important thing. Like, I'm gonna try to look at you guys now. If you're struggling with any kind of addiction, don't give up. It's never too late. The only thing you need to keep trying is to have breath in your lungs. And if you have breath in your lungs, then there is a chance for you. So don't give up. Don't ever give up. Like, just keep trying, because it does click. One of our statements, one of the phrases we say is, "Don't give up before the miracle happens." And you're worth it. You're so worth it.
Absolutely. Every human being, it's a miracle in its own way, but unfortunately many of you may not think about you this way because nobody told you this. So I'm told you this, Dwayne told you this. You are a miracle, you are amazing, and you can perform many of things. You can be whoever you want in this life, in the planet Earth, and all the choice, it's only you doing the choice. Thank you very much for watching all of this video. I hope you really learned something new from that video as myself, and I really hope that story of Dwayne would make some positive impact on your life or in the life somebody who is struggling with addiction right now, and you may maybe want to show them that video just to show that hope is exist, because hope is exists always and we just don't need to forget about it. Thank you very much, Dwayne.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love you, buddy.
I love you, buddy, too. So I'm very happy that I came to my new job very immediately, Dwayne, because you're an amazing coworker and an amazing person. Amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you a lot. It was a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yay, that's
Yeah, oh
all.
my god, man, 1 hour and a half.
Oh my god, my legs were stiff when I stood up.